start off with the issue you have said is a priority for you this election cycle, which is the border. What would you like to see done to curb illegal immigration if elected to the Texas House?
That's a great question. And yes, it is a priority. It's a priority for me. It's a priority for Texans and East Texans. Every county in Texas is a border county. And we are feeling the effect of an open border right here in Smith County. There's drugs that are being trafficked throughout our community. There's crime that has increased, gangs that are more violent, and all of that is connected to our open border. And that issue is a federal issue that our federal government absolutely should shut down. It's the responsibility of the federal government, and unfortunately Texas has been in a position where we have to fill in the gap and try to do everything we can within our power as a state to do the federal government's job for them.
Anything that can be done at the state level to curb illegal immigration, or you feel it's more so a federal government topic?
I mean, it is a federal issue, but the state is not leaving it untouched over the last 4 years, where we've seen the statistics continue to increase under the Biden-Harris administration. And so the state has continued under Governor Abbott's leadership to build the border wall according to federal specs. Like we are actively putting up a wall along the border and putting resources, DPS, Smith County agents are going down to the border and doing a turn of the border. We are putting our resources as a state and as communities across our state to try to stem the tide, but it is a federal issue.
Anything you feel that can specifically, though, be done at the state level that you would like to see done in Austin?
I think there is. I think there are things that we can do here as a state. A border protection unit, more resources, boots on the ground, taking an advantage of the technology that is available, between the resources that are available technologically, as well as allocating state dollars for more boots on the ground in an official capacity, such as a border protection unit. I think that can be an effort to continue to do more as a state. But we as a state are not going to be able to completely shut down the illegal traffic that we see along the border.
You said something interesting earlier on, and you believe that every county in Texas, if I heard you correctly, is a border county.
Correct.
What makes you say that?
When you look at the stats that you get from local law enforcement, they will, across the board, tell you that there is more criminal activity, there are more drugs on the streets as a consequence of our open border.
Of course, you are running. You mentioned earlier you would not have run if State Representative Matt Schaefer continued to stay in Austin. Of course, he's retiring. Where would you say you differ from Schaefer in terms of policy? Any specifics, or you feel like you more so fall in line? There's not too much of a difference between you and him.
That's a great question. I would say that Matt Schaefer, Representative Schaefer, has been a conservative's conservative. He has been a fighter for conservative issues, East Texas values, and I would be very content and grateful to have had a conservative record like he has had. Representative Schaefer and I have personality differences. We might tackle an issue a little bit differently, and I'd say that's the difference that I would draw between myself and Representative Schaefer. But policy areas, we're both Christian, we're both conservative, we both understand the values that have made Texas great, and we're going to fight, both of us, to ensure that we preserve those values.
So it doesn't sound like there's really major policy differences, you'd say, between you and him.
That is correct.
Any vote he took that you might disagree with, you might have done differently? Just curious to hear.
Um, I would say probably not. I mean, I over years of watching Representative Schaefer, but not knowing all the votes. I mean, over a course of 12 years, he's done a great job over 6 sessions. I can't think back and say that there were votes that he took that I would differ on.
Between 2015 and 2017, you served as a regional director for Senator Ted Cruz right here in East Texas. Would you consider that experience sort of like an introduction to politics for you, like a big motivator to want to enter this race to go into the political sphere, or not so much?
Absolutely. My time with Senator Cruz was a great experience for introducing myself to the political world, as well as an opportunity to really get a good grasp for what East Texans believe across our region. I had the opportunity to serve Senator Cruz across 35 counties, from the Oklahoma border to just north of Beaumont and Houston. And so a great swath of East Texas. And East Texans believe in life and liberty. They understand the value of hard work and personal responsibility. And they understand that those are the values that made the state exceptional, that made us the 8th largest economy in the world. And they want to make sure that they have a representative who voices those values in Austin. And during my time with Senator Cruz, I had an opportunity to have that locked in. I knew that about East Texans. I'm a seventh generation East Texan. I know that about the people that live here in East Texas. But it was just reinforced. And so having the opportunity now to potentially go to Austin and represent these kinds of voters, these kinds of constituents, is really a great honor.
You mentioned you're a 7th generation East Texan, and you work in the real estate industry as well. Do you feel as though more businesses, more people are coming to East Texas because they like the region, or do you feel like a lot of people are leaving? Potentially, there could be a point where there aren't as many people living here. There's not that 8th or 9th generation East Texan.
I think there's a couple things going on there. For one, people are more mobile than ever before, any generation previously, and so they'll pick up and leave. And so it's more challenging to get the grounding over generations where you see a family stay in a particular area or a particular state even. But people move to East Texas because they value the things that I just mentioned, and they want to get away from the rat race that's in the big cities. We see a lot of folks moving their families, their businesses to East Texas because they don't want to live in Dallas. They don't want to live in Houston. They don't want to live in Austin. They want some elbow room, and they want to live in a community that values the same thing that they value. And so I don't think that's going to slow down.
Because I want to go more off your real estate background.
Sure.
What's your take on the current housing market, and do you feel any more should be done to help first-time home buyers?
Well, I believe in a free market, and I believe that if you get government out of the way, primarily, that the market will adjust as needed. For home buyers, for businesses, commercial real estate, for development. And so I would not be in favor of more handouts coming from the federal government. I think that you ought to have an incentive to work, to earn, and that you ought to be able to keep most of what you earn. And that the tax weight and burden should not be such that you are taxed in a way that you're not able to afford a home, and that we don't also need so much government involvement and playing, I guess, between inflation and playing around with the dollar in such a fashion that you see values skyrocketing today.
So how much of a role, if any, in your view, should the government play in increasing housing supply, or just housing supply in general?
None.
Zero.
Yes. I believe that the government's role is supposed to be very limited. I believe that if I had to boil it down to three areas, government exists to keep people safe. It exists to keep people free. And it exists to provide an infrastructure for the free market to work, to be successful. And so if that is the role of government, then you're going to have a prosperous economy where people have the ability to live where they want to live. They can raise their family freely, they can build businesses, they can earn a living, and they can keep what they earn and they can pass it down to the next generation. There is so much government intervention and government involvement today that's a challenge in a lot of communities and a lot of states.
You mentioned inflation, and of course many families here in East Texas still feel the impact from inflation. If elected, what would you like to see done to improve the economic situation here?
Continue to lower taxes, lower property taxes, get the government out of the way. Where red tape exists and should be removed, there are responsibilities that government has, and it should do them and do them well. The main thing that my job in Austin would involve is getting government out of the way, making sure we're spending taxpayer dollars wisely and effectively so that we are not having to raise that tax burden on Texans.
You mentioned earlier that you homeschool your kids, and education is set to be a big topic this upcoming legislative session.
Absolutely.
Governor Abbott feels he has the votes to pass school vouchers. And I want to ask you about school vouchers because politicians across the region, across the state, really, it's a divisive topic. Where do you stand on school vouchers?
So education savings accounts, school choice is coming to Texas. And I believe that every parent deserves the freedom to choose what is best for their kids. We are very blessed to have a lot of great options here in Smith County in House District 6. We have great public schools, we have great private schools, we have great homeschool co-ops and other opportunities available to parents. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference here in Smith County when this passes, but there ought to be freedom to choose what is best for each individual kid, and every parent ought to have that freedom. They ought to have that opportunity. There are kids across the state, and particularly in urban areas, that are suffering from failing schools and they have no option available to them. This will provide those parents with an opportunity for their kids to get a great education.
You say you feel school vouchers will pass. If they come to a vote, yes or no, how would you vote?
Yes.
You would, okay. And a lot of the disagreement from school vouchers really stems from taking funds from those public schools, like here in East Texas, and there's concern that schools could suffer as a result of that. How do you respond to that concern?
My understanding is that, and I know this for a fact, that the governor supports our public schools. He is not trying to take away any support for our public schools. In this process, this is a process about making education better for all Texas kids. This is not about hurting our public schools and kids in the public school system. That is not part of the conversation here, and frankly, that line of thinking usually comes from teachers' unions and those who are opposed to choice across the board.
I'm just curious to hear your perspective on this because, if school vouchers, if education savings accounts are passed, students will be able to attend, give money to a non-public school, funds that could otherwise be in a public school, and you don't feel that hurts them in any way.
I believe that the legislation that has been presented in the past, and we'll see what the details look like on legislation next year, but I do not believe that there are funds that are being pulled away from public education in order to make this possible. The state is not hurting our public schools in order to accomplish this.
And continuing our topic on education,
Sure.
you mentioned, I believe you're an Aggies fan.
I am.
You are. You recently, I saw on Twitter, you expressed some concern over Texas A&M allowing students to study LGBTQ studies as a minor. Now, they recently deactivated that minor.
Correct.
Why was that course, those specific courses, a concern for you?
I think this is one of the challenges that we face today in our institutions across the board giving way to a progressive rot, to put it frankly. Unfortunately, our taxpayer dollars were going to fund courses and minor programs that are specifically intended to promote values that honestly destroy our state, to just destroy our society. That kind of intentionality on the part of progressives is intended to destroy the family unit, I believe. And at the end of the day, that's very dangerous. Families suffer, and we cannot afford that.
When you mention the word progressive, what does that term mean to you?
It's a great question. Progressive entails a liberal, non-traditional perspective, I believe. And so when I talk about progressivism, I would say it is a trend away from the traditions of the West, by and large, faith and family.
Okay, well, I appreciate your clarification on that. Going back to the LGBTQ studies,
Sure.
There may be some people here in House District 6 who are part of that community who may hear what you say and feel you will not represent them in Austin. How would you respond to that concern?
Well, I'm running to represent all of Smith County and House District 6, and where government is involved, I'm going to do my best to represent all of my constituents. But I am running on a platform and on my own personal beliefs that value our families, that value the traditional views that we've always shared for generations, for thousands of years. And the idea that, for instance, a marriage is between a man and a woman, that boys should not be playing in women's sports, girls' sports, and that a child, for instance, can't choose to change genders. Like, these are traditional views, and they're views that are held strongly by most of the East Texans and have been held for millennia. And those are the views that I will continue to hold and represent. But that is not to take away the rights that people who would disagree with that way of thinking. I'm not taking away those rights.
Would you work alongside someone in the LGBTQ community if given the opportunity?
If we have an opportunity to work together, absolutely.
Going off of that, if elected, how important is it to you to work alongside others who you may not always see eye to eye on a certain issue or policy? How important is that to you?
It's incredibly important. I mean, you can't get anything done without learning how other people think, and learning how to give and take. I mean, that's what building relationships involves, and there is nothing we can do legislatively that doesn't involve working with people who are going to disagree in some fashion or form with you. There's 150 members of the Texas House. there's only one of me. And so I will have an opportunity to work with 149 other folks who think differently, and we're going to agree on a lot and we're going to disagree on some things, and that's the variety that makes life great.
Let's talk about property tax reform. You've called for property tax reform in your platform. To what levels would you like to see property taxes reduced or changed?
Sure. Well, I think that we are continuing to chip away at this. Texas is very proud of being a state where there is no income tax, and that's great. But we need to end the practice of homeowners across the state of Texas being forced to rent their homes from the government. And that's what happens at the end of the day. When you've got a home that's paid off or land that's paid off, try not paying your property taxes at the end of the year and see who will come knocking and what the consequences will be. And so I think moving away from a property tax structure is important. It's immoral for you to be to have to rent your home from the government in perpetuity. And so we're going to continue to chip away at that. And I think that you're going to see more property tax relief in the 89th legislative session. But it's a big task. It's a big lift, and we're going to continue to make progress.
I know when people talk about property taxes, they're talking about a lot of time, a specific amount of money per $100 valuation, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Is there a specific number that comes to mind when you think that would be a good number to put property taxes at?
I don't have a number, no.
But you feel the number right now is too high, too low?
I think we need to continue to lower that number.
Okay. All right. And, another topic this legislative session could be marijuana. Marijuana legalization. It did not pass in the last legislative session, the 80th legislature. If that bill were brought before the upcoming legislature, how would you vote on it?
I would be opposed to the legalization of marijuana.
Why?
It is a gateway drug that only creates a habit among its users that leads to further drug abuse. And I think that is dangerous for our kids, and you're allowing, if we were to pass that, we'd be setting them up for failure.
On your website, I saw that there was topics on the border, on parental choice, and on property taxes. What are some other major issues to you that you'd like to see some change done in Austin if elected?
Well, that's a great question. There's a lot. There's a lot that is before the legislature every session. And I think that every opportunity that we have to reduce government waste, the bloat that exists among government spending, we have a $320 billion budget every biennium, and that's an incredibly large amount of money. So more accountability, more transparency across the board. I think I want to see and dig into where all those dollars are being spent. One of the areas, people will ask me in conversation, well, what committees do you want to be on? Well, one of them is appropriations, because there's no better way to get a 101 course on how the government works than seeing where the money flows and making sure that it's being spent wisely. That is something that is important to me, making sure that we are setting up our agencies in a way that they are set up to be successful. And the transparency part of that is an important issue for me. And so we're still working through specifics on what kind of legislation we want to see accomplished. There are areas where we need to continue to provide greater election integrity. We need to continue to make progress on that issue. I think you saw probably recently that Texas is cleaning up its voter rolls. North Carolina is cleaning up their voter rolls. This is something that we ought to be doing on an annual basis to make sure that voters in our elections are legal. That's an area where we need to continue to see improvement.
If elected, it's uncertain who will be the Speaker of the Texas House. Is there anyone that you would support to serve in that position?
What a loaded question.
You think so?
I hear there's a debate going on future leadership in the House. And I will tell you this, I was in Austin for a conversation on who should be the future Speaker of the House, because I believe that if you take let's say you take all of the political baggage and history out of the equation and the emotions that currently exist among existing members, take all that out of the equation. In order for us to have a successful 89th legislative session, we have to have a Speaker of the House who can work with the Lieutenant Governor and the Governor to accomplish the priorities that we have before us. And I would venture to say that the current arrangement does not allow for a productive conversation, specifically between the Speaker and the Lieutenant Governor. And I want to go to Austin. I want to get things done. I think I've got a lot of members and nominees who want to accomplish that as well. And so we're going to have to see a change. Representative David Cook came out of that meeting last week with the support of everyone at that meeting. And so I look forward to supporting him for that role.
So you would support Cook for that role?
Correct.
Not Speaker Phelan?
That is correct.
All right. We've talked about quite a bit over the course of this conversation, and Election Day is fast approaching. What would be your closing argument to voters as they cast their ballots very soon?
Yes, we're finally nearing the end of this runway, and it's exciting. I understand the values that East Texans hold dear. I understand the values that we all hold of life and liberty, that we value the principles of hard work, of free enterprise, of being personally responsible for our actions, for our words. And I know that East Texans want to see that in Austin. They want to see someone who will fight for those values. And I look forward to doing that. I believe in a limited government and believe that Texans ought to be able to earn a living, ought to be able to raise a family, go to church, and do so with complete freedom and without wondering when government is going to come breathing down their necks. And that's what I'm going to work to accomplish in Austin.